Welcome back, everyone, or welcome if you're joining us for the first time. This is Ensuring Success 2025, and this is session 11, From Ethics to Execution, Building AI-Ready Firms in the Age of Intelligent Assurance. So I just have a few housekeeping tips for you before we get started. And if you've already heard these like multiple times, I apologize for the repeat, but here we go. You can interact with our speakers by going to the Ask a Question box at the bottom of your screen, and anything you enter there, you can ask questions or post comments. We will get those here up on the set, and we can share those with our speakers during the session. If you have any technical questions about the event, if you're having trouble with sound or with the picture, or if you have any questions about CPE, you can go to the top of your screen above this window. There's an email address, info@ensuringsuccess.com, and also a phone number that you can text to. And we have tech people on site waiting to take your questions at those two locations. Ensuring Success would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors, and they include ADP, Avalara, Canopy, CPA.com, Digits, eFile4Biz, FieldGuide, Carbon, Count, WriteWorks, SafeSend, SureLink, ValueInsights.ai, Walters Kluwer, and Xero. And in particular, this session is brought to us by FieldGuide. Regarding CPE credit, the way we issue CPE is we verify your attendance by producing 3 codes during the session, and we expect you to write those codes down. So at 3 times during the session, we'll take a brief break. There'll be a code that's displayed at the bottom of your screen, and you'll write that down. So it's a 3-digit code. So at 3 different times during the session, you'll collect 3 3-digit codes. When the session's over, when the day's over, when you're done for the day, you can go to the CPE/CE credit option at the top of your screen in the menu bar. Click there, and you'll be taken to a screen that asks for your email, the email you used to register for this event. If you didn't register for the event yet, you'll provide your email and your registration information. And then in both of those scenarios, you'll be taken to our CPE screen. There's a place where you can click Claim Your Credit. And at that point, you'll be able to enter the 3-digit codes you collected for all of the sessions you attended, and you can download your certificates right there on the spot. So this session, From Ethics to Execution, features this panel of very interesting experts. I think you're going to get a lot out of this group. The panel consists of Becky Livingston, Jin Chang, Kane Polikoff, and then also we have our co-moderator, Alexander DeFelice. So I'll have each of them introduce themselves before we get started. Becky?
Hi, I'm Becky Livingston from Penn Heel Marketing, and I support accounting firms across the country with their marketing and digital needs.
Jin?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jin Chang. I'm the CEO, co-founder at FieldGuide. We build a vertical AI application and AI agents for CPA firms.
Kane.
Kane Polikoff. Good evening, good afternoon to everybody. I'm a practice leader for client advisory service at Cohen Resnick, and I'm excited to be here today. I've been in the industry for about 30 years and excited to have our conversation shortly.
And I am Alexandra DeFelice for the 11th time. I am Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer for JMBM Law Firm in Los Angeles. I am the co-moderator and bell ringer.
Right. Very good. All right, we have talked about AI, I believe, in every single session in one form or another since we started. It seems to be the topic of the hour. And some of the sessions have been very intense in AI, and some have just mentioned it peripherally, but we want to make sure that we cover AI from all different angles. This particular session is about ethics in AI use. And what we really want to do is unpack the ethical circumstances that surround the use of and adoption of AI. So we're going to try and break that into some separate parts: governance, culture, upskilling, workflow orchestration, building an ethical firm-wide strategy. These are the serious questions that if you're really using AI in your firm, you really want to make sure you're covering these topics well and protecting yourself from any possible litigation or improper behavior in terms of usage, or your staff in terms of usage. So let's dig into that a little bit. And Jen, I'm going to jump right over to you to start us off. Where do you want to go with ethical AI adoption?
Well, the areas that you highlighted, all very important, because what I always like to emphasize about AI use is it's not enough to just think about where you use AI, but setting the right culture, the right leadership, the right governance mechanisms and controls. So where I usually like to start is at the leadership level. For leaders of CPA firms of all sizes, the reality is your practitioners will be using AI whether you like it or not. So as a leader, you need to set the right tone at the top for your firm. Create a safe space for your practitioners to incorporate AI into their practice. If you don't, the implication is that they will use AI without you knowing. I like to talk about that as phantom AI. And by creating that safe space, your folks are going to talk about AI in a more open way. They're going to talk about what isn't working, but also what's working, and where you can double down on finding value, impact. Right? And I think we talked about this prior to this conversation or panel too. Ken, you've been incorporating AI into your practice every single day, right?
Yeah, and I think, as you rightly said, it's a journey. I think everybody's been talking about AI for the last 5 years, but it's been more of a sales pitch. And I think as we are now today, so much further than we were even 3 years ago. And as you talk about leadership and a safe space, but first it's really understanding what the value can be. I think we were talking about 30 years ago, we had a bunch of folks in a room doing data entry, and then we migrated to, I heard on a couple other panels about OCR and capture and images and things like that. But it's really defining the use cases, understanding, you talked about the governance, which we can talk about a little bit more, but how do you do it right? But not only doing it right, but having your team be part of the solution to help drive the outcomes that you want, and to help ensure that the change management is done correctly. And the outcome, we were talking about the outcome of whether it's a deliverable of a financial statement or a processing of invoices, is still the same. But it's how do you leverage human intelligence and artificial intelligence and automation together to drive what you need. And that's it. For me, it's fascinating. What a great time to be in the industry with everything coming together, and seeing what's capable is just enormous.
Yeah, we talked about this being kind of the modern engagement team of the future, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about not just your team of human experts, but also teaming up with digital team members too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, we were talking earlier, which I was fascinated about, copyright infringement.
Yes.
And it's, one thing is understanding the technology, but I mean, I was blown away. If you want to share some of the statistics and from what a copyright infringement is, it's just, I need to go back to my team and talk about that right after this session.
Yeah.
So, but please.
Actually, if you're going to get into it, this is interesting. There's a few sessions where we have actual quizzes, not just what do you think about this, but we actually are going to test you.
Oh.
So I'm going to launch this because there's 3 questions about copyright, but I think we need to pause for CPE before I do that.
Yeah, let's do that. So we just want to show the first CPE code on the bottom of your screen. You'll want to record this number if you're planning on collecting CPE credit for this session. So be sure to make a note of that.
Yeah, so when I launch this poll, which I'm not going to do until the CPE code is no longer there, is the questions are, can AI-generated content be copyrighted, yes or no? If you publish AI-generated content without editing, can someone else legally reuse it, true or false? And if a CPA or tax professional significantly edits, interprets, or expands AI-generated content, the resulting work can be copyrighted as a human-authored piece, true or false. I am sending that out now, and we will find out the answers after you give us this other information, Becky.
Oh, that's a great lead into
All right, nice.
copyright law. I'm not a lawyer. I could play one on TV, but I'm not a lawyer. But I have done a lot of research about copyright and AI, because there's a concern with, if I copy this right off of a website, put it in an AI tool, Chat, Gemini, doesn't matter what you're using, and derive a new version, it's free for use. It's royalty free. Well, that's technically not true. First of all, if you're copying something that is already copyrighted, let's say we take a tax article off of Forbes. We grab that, say that's a great article, our clients need to know about this. Let's rework this a little bit and see what we can do. So you copy it right out of the Forbes article, drop it into an AI tool, and say make it unique and plagiarism free. That's the first copyright infringement because the original piece is copyrighted. You've already taken it once, that's the first infringement, that's $10,000 fine. Second infringement is the new piece that comes out is owned by the originator. So if you're using something that's copyrighted, the new piece that you're creating is copyrighted to that originator. So that's a problem. But you take that second piece your AI tool has created, you drop it on your website. You use it in a video script. You throw it into a presentation. You put it in a brochure. Every version that you populate is a copyright infringement. So that's a thing to be concerned about when it comes to risk, because if your teams are doing that, taking originating work from some other place, dropping it, even if it's the tax regulation, that is copyrighted. Dropping it in an AI tool, repurposing it, rewriting it, doing something, that still belongs to the originator. That's a problem with copyright. When you're thinking about doing these kinds of things, so first is, if you're dropping it in, reusing it, that's an infringement. The second is, if your staff edits the content that comes back out. So you drop something in an AI tool, it spits out a result. The amount that is changed may be copyrightable by your team. So that's interesting. Mm-hmm. It's about an 80% change. So if you're creating something in an AI tool, it spits something else back to you. You can edit that, put in your own interpretation, you can put in your own stats, you can put in your firm's personality, information, things that you might have. That new piece can be copyrighted by your firm, as long as it's about an 80% chance of change. So that one can be true, as long as there's a huge difference. Also, if you take something and AI generates it, you ask it a question. What are the 5 tax tips my CPA needs to share with clients this quarter? It creates that information for you. You may not copyright that straight out of an AI tool because it's not human generated. It's created by a machine. Therefore, AI detection tools, they've been around for a long time. Some people say they're not real. I believe they're real. I've been using AI for years. And if an AI detection tool picks up the piece that you've created and says this thing was generated by AI, your competitors can use it, whether you put a copyright on it or not, because you can't technically copyright it. So let's say you create some fabulous thing that AI wrote for you. You drop it on your website. Your competitor says, ooh, look, they created this new piece. They run it through a detection tool that says, generated by AI. They can now use it exactly as it's written without an infringement. Wow. Scary.
Yeah, no, it's scary, and it also gets pretty expensive, as you were saying, 10,000 to 50,000 you shared earlier.
Yeah, every instance is at least a $10,000 fine.
And I don't think a lot of folks understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, I see a lot, even I talk to my daughter who's, everything she does, she runs through Chatter and she sends it out. I mean, when you get into the professional world, and that could be pretty serious. So to understand the regulations and to follow the compliance is such a critical thing for sure.
It is, absolutely.
I think some of our attendees might wish we'd issued the poll again after you gave that description.
Yeah, so in short, we've got to respect the work.
We have to, and use your brain.
Yes.
It still works. Yes. The human piece, we were talking earlier about the human element of all of the AI, and I put out on social media a few weeks ago, I said, AI tools are tools. You're the differentiator.
It's true.
So it's the human element that we still need, and we need to rely on so much still.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah. In fact, we're starting to see this coming out of some standard setting bodies too.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's from the AICPA, but others like PCI, ISO, and so on, they're saying, look, it's totally okay to use AI in your practice as an assistant, right? But you as a human are the expert. You own the work, the results. And it's not an excuse to say like, oh, this came out of a large language model. Like it's not on me. Like you as a human practitioner, you are the expert. You make the judgment call.
Right.
And you bear the responsibility of the information.
And I think it's important that we're starting to see a lot of training. We were talking about from an education standpoint of from different all levels, leadership down to entry level, of how, what does it mean, what can be done, what can't be done, and even looking for certification processes during what does this mean. And you were talking more from a content creation standpoint, but there's also the workflow and the outcomes of the data, which is another aspect. When you talked about PCI and HIPAA compliance and everything that comes into that, where is the information? What is AI pulling from? What are the different sources? What can be done? You get into some of the IT infrastructure security within an organization like ourselves. That, I mean, there's a lot of nuances.
Absolutely.
And we can't be the wild, wild west anymore. It has to be defined. It has to be reviewed. And going back to your point, Gail, about the governance is such a critical thing of what it means, of what can you do, what can't you do, and how, as it continues to change, as you talked about, we were talking about your product, how the evolution of change is happening every couple weeks, every month. And how does that impact a client like myself? And that is fascinating, how fast things are moving there.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about change management, and everyone in the industry is talking about change management, right? Because the reality is the future of our work does in fact look different.
It does.
Right? So how intentionally do we need to approach change management? Like the old school way of just training your teams, the same playbooks probably aren't relevant anymore. Right? So how are you thinking about that, Kane?
Yeah, so the whole organization structure we were talking about is changing. So we have different levels when you think from an associate to a senior to a manager to a senior manager to a director to a partner. But now what we're looking for is the disruption is happening at really the senior and associate level. And that disruption is fascinating because we are talking about finding individuals from colleges and bringing them into our organizations. But now what you're deploying is the use case of AI to help doing the reconciliations, to help moving and making decisions on journal entries. And a lot of these tasks are related more at the entry level. So the organization, you may need, let's say, 20 people today to create and execute for a specific client. Mm-hmm. Well, you've already taken the automation. We've done global operations, and we've gotten to the point where now we have 15 people. But now what you're doing for that specific client is you define the use cases of the reconciliations of a dynamic close management, and that was 10 to 15 now becomes 7. And how the 7 change and how they deployed that to our clients, where now the AI is the first level.
Right.
That's right.
And the second level, which is even more critical, is the review. It's the validation. It's to ensure that the final outcome is what you're looking for. So you're actually embedding it into a hybrid, where as the evolution goes, is going to change our whole nature of what we do. And that's fascinating. And I think for some, they think it's scary, but I think it's exciting because what it's allowing, at least from a client advisory service perspective, is giving us more time to look at the information, to digest it, and then to be able to advise on it. Where before we were spending more time entering the information, trying to figure out the reconciliations, doing all this process, where that's going to be done in the future by artificial intelligence. Where now my team can focus more on spending time with our clients and educating them and looking at variances and looking at historical information. And that's where it gets fun.
Right, so we've got to upskill and train our teams, our practitioners to do that. Our industry has always talked about the pyramid model, right? You and I talked about this prior to this conversation too. What does that shape of that pyramid model look like?
Right.
And I would argue, we always talk about this profession being an apprenticeship. This is a way to really make this an apprenticeship model. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so too, because it gives people an opportunity to take the tools that they have available to them and the information that it spits out to help them progress faster than they might have done previously. We were talking about, ticking and tying and doing all of those basic accounting skills when they first come into a firm, no matter what size it might be, the firm. They're using basic skills. We can have tools to help them do those things, and instead they're now looking at the output to advise and to learn and see the bigger picture. You were talking about the bigger picture earlier. How can an accounting professional student come into a firm and understand how this impacts audit? And they might not understand that when they're ticking and tying.
Right.
Right? So they're going, all I do is tick and tie all day, or all I do are these basic skills all day. I don't understand why I'm doing these skills. Why do I have to do this all day long for 40 hours a week?
That's right.
But it's even more important to understand why it does what it does.
Yes.
So we are looking for hiring very top-notch accountants that know it inside. It's even more important to hire that.
Yeah.
And because when we looked in the last 10 or 15 years, the systems and the general ledger systems were doing a lot of the work on behalf of the accountants. So what we were finding is we were hiring accountants that no longer knew how to do accounting.
Right.
Because the system was actually doing it for them. But the issue was they weren't able to determine whether it was right or wrong.
Correct.
And that became even a bigger issue. So it's even more important that the skills and to be able to validate and to challenge the system and to understand when things are wrong.
Correct.
That's even more important than knowing when it's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it sounds like, we're all in agreement here that the way we train our workforce, upskill our workforce for the future, we've got to train folks to be able to interpret the results, the data, versus spending a ton of hours on the manual parts of the job.
Right.
And I would argue, audits are, they serve such a noble purpose in the world, right? Because whether people know what auditors do or not, a lot of us are consumers of their work, right? Like when you buy stocks, auditors are providing assurance around that information.
Right.
So we've been talking about how the tragedy here is for staff ones and staff twos who are just doing the manual work. They can't see the big picture. They don't understand the audit strategy. Why are they testing something in a certain way? What are the risks involved, right?
Right.
So it sounds like Kane, even as you're always at the forefront of these tech waves, right? And as you're rethinking your servicing model, are you actually also kind of reconsidering how you train?
Yeah, I mean, I think the onboarding process is going to change. And it's finding a way for the new team members to really understand not only the technology, but what the expectations are and what, I think the challenge, I think being more analytical, I think is going to be, because the productivity improvements and optimization is going to be done mainly from the automation and the AI. Where I think in the past, with the manual process, come on, you can run faster, you can work, so you're working more hours. So it's going to help from a work-life balance because the system is going to be able to do more of the work. But the focus of our staff is going to be, is to be able to take what's being provided to not only understand that, but then to take it to the next level. So I do think that it's going to change the way we're onboarding. And we're debating now as we have a bunch of interns we want to bring in next summer. And what happened? You can't take an intern and just move them straight to doing a close, a month-end close. They're going to go, I don't know what's going on. What am I doing here? And so we're even thinking about having situations where we have cases where our system is very manual, and so they actually have to go and do that work and understand that work, and if they graduate, they move into what the expected result would be, but they have to understand what they're doing to be able to manage and monitor what they're doing, because it's hard to go from one step, all the way to step 7. That's the hard part.
Yeah. So a true apprenticeship.
Yeah, no, that is the key.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say one more thing, because like if we have over 100 people that are doing CAS, but with deploying this technology, I'm going to be able to do the same amount of work with 60 people. So now what I need to do is upskill my 40 people. So not only the onboarding of new people, that's very important, but the existing staff. So we're going to have to re-onboard some of our new team, which yields to change management, which then which impacts culture. So you have all those things happening all within everything else is maintaining your client relationship, and I think that's fun. So let's hope that everybody else feels the same way.
That's refreshing to hear, because not every leader thinks that way. But highly encouraging, obviously, for a profession. Now, we've also talked about, elevating our skill sets, whether junior or existing practitioners, to be more analytical, right?
Yep.
And I like to give our industry some credit here. Like, we've been talking about being a trusted advisor for
Ever.
Forever.
Ever.
And one could argue in the earlier days, trusted advisor was a very visionary thing,
Right.
in some ways kind of a marketing thing,
Right. Right.
But with the advent of generative and agentic AI now, like, I think the time or the moment for being a trusted advisor is finally approaching us.
I think that's true. I mean,
But I think the big question and is, what is an advisor?
Yeah.
So that's what we were talking about. I don't know if you had this conversation with any of the others, but
No, and right now we're going to whet your appetite for the answer.
well, and I didn't even know. Wow. All right.
We're going to take a very brief break, hear a word from our sponsor, FieldGuide. We'll come back with the second CPE code for this session, and we'll tell you what it means to be an advisor.
Demand for audit and advisory services is surging, but a talent shortage and outdated technology are creating quality concerns, talent burnout, and unmet client expectations. Transform how your firm gets work done with Field Agents, the leading agentic AI solution that's purpose-built for audit and advisory, that moves beyond task automation to deliver true end-to-end engagement automation. Field Agents orchestrate multi-step procedures, like designing test plans and selecting samples, performing evidence testing, and documenting results, acting like an extension of your team. With Field Agents, firms unlock growth by empowering teams to do more, all while enhancing quality. Amplify your team's uniquely human skills to deliver superior work, enhance client experiences, and unlock growth for the next decade. Go beyond automation to transformation with Field Agents.
Welcome back. If you take a look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the second CPE code for this session. So be sure to write that down if you're planning on collecting CPE credit. Now we want to go back to where we left you hanging, which was, let's talk a little bit about what it is to be an advisor and how this is changing our profession.
I'll let you answer that.
He points to me. From a marketing perspective, with most of my clients that are advisors, everybody is saying it. Advisor, I'm a trusted advisor. And I'm like, well, okay, what makes you a trusted advisor compared to your competitors who are also saying they're trusted advisors? And it all comes down to not just interpreting results that they're getting from data, but also helping their client to understand the impact that information is going to have to help them make decisions. So it's not just a here and now, it is a future-looking element as well, where people can say, here's what we're seeing as far as trends, predictions, information. Based on this, here's what we can talk about for your future, for your firm, for your company, for your business.
No, I think that's so. The question I'd asked on top of that, how do you know if you're a good advisor or not?
Well, that I can't answer because all of my clients say they're great advisors.
So everybody.
You answer that one.
Well, Kate, in your practice, right? Like, in the CAS world, right? In the CAS spectrum, let's call it, right? There's, the historical bookkeeping type stuff, right? And as you automate more of that work, right, it frees up more capacity for that forward-looking advisory. So you're at the forefront of this, right? Like, how do you kind of measure your prowess as an advisor?
So now I get my own question.
That's right.
I see how it is, but that's okay. So it's interesting when you look at the evolution from the paper to getting into digital and get into cloud. And when I started in the profession, it was called write-up work. I think even that's happening today, which really all that was being done was for year-end to provide the information to your tax professional to provide a tax return.
Yep.
And how do you define that as not an advisor? I think that is basically just data entry, information, reconciling, and putting that information to where it is. So you fast forward, today we are an extension of our client's team.
Yes.
We are in operations.
Yeah.
We are working daily. We have a lot of our staff that are talking to our clients 3 or 4 times a day, and brainstorming, understanding some of their pain points, some of their challenges. New things happen with our organization that they want to acquire a new restaurant, or they're looking to shrink. And it's becoming more and more important as we need to not only understand the financial information of what we're receiving as part of the delivery of the financial statements, but is to look at things more holistically.
Yeah.
And it's you can't just, I mean, I always used to hear the saying is you just throw a financial statement over the fence and you say good luck, you know, may the force be with you.
Yeah.
And that's changing now. We have more and more of our clients that have higher expectations, and they challenge us, and they ask all these questions about operations, about marketing, about sales, and we are becoming management consultants.
Yes.
Right.
And the aspect is not only pulling the financial information, but making sure that the payroll information, all the data is put together. And our job is to help interpret that, to your point, is right, is helping to advise and share that information and simplify for them. I mean, how many folks would used to get a 50-page report? How many folks have time to read a 50-page report? I don't.
Well, now they put it in AI and say
Yeah.
summarize it.
Well, but that's-
in layman's terms.
But I think when you look at dashboarding and
Yeah.
reporting, which we
Yeah.
didn't get into, it's even becoming more of understanding how that is and to be able to meet with our clients and drive them. We're part of board meetings.
Yep.
We're helping to go on site now. There's a lot more of, and I was just at a client earlier yesterday, but our clients want to be with us. They want to understand it. Being virtual is fine, but our clients are expecting us now to be more in person, to have those discussions, to walk through an operations, and to understand what does that mean for them as they plan their budgets.
Yep.
If they're they're having challenges with their personnel, and those are the expectations they have of us now.
So I have a few questions, just making sure, focusing on ethics and some of the things that you guys were talking about before we got on stage here. There's a lot of concern about the accuracy, right? So at what point is it our staff, like is the onus on us and our staff to make sure that we have the accurate information versus it's on, it's not our responsibility, or if we're using a vendor that is supposed to be making the decisions to, that's different than accuracy. Accuracy and security. Let's bucket them both in there.
That's a good one.
To say we're not using your client's data. Don't worry. Oh, just kidding. Like, so how much of that is our responsibility?
Well, from a standards perspective, obviously it's very clear that the professional owns the output and results, but as a service or as a technology provider too, we view it as a shared responsibility, frankly, because practitioners, professionals are relying on us to deliver at a high accuracy rate too. So, we were talking about earlier, what does user testing of these new technologies look like in this AI era, right? The reality is user testing, as we knew it from a enterprise software perspective of 10, 20 years ago, is now different, right?
Yeah.
The best AI tools out there, systems out there, they end up building a proprietary test data set, right? They know the key, in breaking down the workflow ontology, the key steps of that service delivery and what's important for delivering that service at the end of the day, right? And then as new models come out, as new LLMs come out, the best AI systems are running every single model through this test data set. The reality is, no one model is good for everything, right?
Oh, really?
So now we have to invest in a bunch of different tools. And so what kind of questions do we need to be asking? This came up at the last session. If I'm going to invest in a tool and I feel that they're saying your data is secure, what kind of questions should I ask to feel confident that I'll be protecting my clients?
Yeah, so the thing that I like to highlight is when you look at each model or each chat-based LLM experience, yes, those are individual models. But when you look at AI systems or AI applications that are built for the CPA profession, oftentimes those AI systems or platforms are picking multiple models and routing the right problem to the right model, right? Now,
So to simplify that,
yes.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
that means it's a single model that has multiple modules in it that solve different problems.
Okay.
So for example, I hate to use this example, but QuickBooks, it not only does bookkeeping, it does some other things. In the tools and models he's talking about, it not only performs certain types of tasks, maybe data analytics or workflows or other elements, marketing, an LLM model, many of them have marketing options. It is a tool that has multiple modules that can perform different tasks for the business. And each of those tasks are again tested against the person's data set.
So as a CPA practitioner, probably the right questions to ask are, what are the underlying models you're using
Yep.
to run your system? Right? How do you decide which models to use? Right?
Yep.
If they're telling you we use one model, you will really want to question
that. Or if they don't tell you there's a test on the data.
Right.
Because that's a big run for the hills kind of thing.
Absolutely.
We need to know what kind of test data you're running through your systems.
Okay, so here's another question, and I'm going to start with you. I'm going to ask you, King. Is we talked a lot about disclosure at some of the other panels, and I know you guys discussed it a little bit, but there's not a rule that says we have to tell our clients we're using this, right? Or is there? And if there's not, how do we tell them, and how much do we tell them?
We don't tell them anything. No, just kidding.
Well, some of the other
No, it's a fair point. So I think that. So I'll answer the question of outsourcing, offshoring.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2002, 2003, when I was doing it, I know that everybody was doing hush hush, right? There's a lot of large organizations that would not share that they're using offshore.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And but as there's been an evolution, I can tell you, I mean, we're fully transparent that we use Chennai operations as well as our Philippines. Actually, part of our...
Good thing, because your colleague was on a panel earlier and
Did she
told
say
us
that?
that.
Oh, good, I'm glad. But if Michelle didn't say that, I was going to talk to her then. But I think that it's... So we want to be fully transparent. So in a lot of cases, we are actually building and implementing the technology. So for whether it's QuickBooks or Sage Intacct or NetSuite or Xero, whatever that is, they're building AI within their general ledger systems, okay?
Right.
And then there's the workflow products that integrate with those. So we talk to our clients, and we're still at the very beginning of our journey, but had a discussion with our CEO yesterday, and he's asking, which he's rightly so, is how do we integrate our tech stack and leverage AI? But of course, he's asking, well, I want a discount. So that's where he's coming from. But transparency and disclosure, I think, is very important, because I think it's important for them to see, because most of our new prospects ask, what is your AI strategy?
Yeah.
And what do you use global operations, and how do you automate that?
But are you only telling them if they ask, or is it part of the engagement letter?
So it's not in the engagement letter as of today, because we're just at the very beginning of our journey. But I would make the same assumption that we have in our engagement letter for global operations. Here's what it is for global operations, that we would also include that as well.
And I'm definitely, from our vantage point at FieldGuide, we're interacting with fast-growing CPA and advisory firms out there on a day-to-day basis, and we're increasingly hearing that more and more firms are including in their engagement letters, right? And I think there's this misconception in the industry, like, oh, I'm afraid to tell my clients that we're using AI. But I think, Kane, your example of how you're able to automate the manual parts of the job to provide better strategic advisory to your clients, you have an opportunity to actually be transparent, build trust, but also sell the better value you're able to provide too.
Right. So I'm going to ask you a question too. So
Now it's not. I'm not used to this. I'm supposed to be the one asking the questions. Okay, go ahead.
So straight through processing for AP invoicing has been something that's been around for years.
Yeah.
So if you have 1,000 invoices for a client, and you're able to run them through a system, where today you have to enter and manually touch every one of those. Now, the goal for a lot of organizations over the last 10 years is to take those 1,000 and run 800 of them through the system automatically and only have to do manually for the others.
Okay.
So for that, should I tell the client that we're enhancing the processing? Is that something I should disclose in your mind?
I would say no.
But I think that's a similar part of when you think of AI. That's more from an automation perspective.
That's automation.
But
right?
but how and I know you had a discussion about automation versus AI, but AI in a way is an enabler to help automate more too. So I'm just trying to give that perspective. Should I go and say, client, hey, I'm now only touching 200 of your 800 invoices? Is that something I should tell them?
Well, and at another session, they were saying like they don't list every single piece of technology and software that they use. I mean, obviously, if they're using QuickBooks to help them with their bookkeeping or whatever, that's one thing. But to say like, oh, I use FieldGuide, I use this, I use every single vendor that was on the last 14 sessions. They're not saying that, but there's not necessarily the security concerns like there used to be with offshoring back in the day.
Well, but there still is concern and security concerns with offshoring if you're not doing it the right way.
Correct.
So I've seen, and I was just in Chennai last week, but I know friends that have partnered with certain third parties that when they found out they were in a garage and they didn't have the right infrastructure.
Yep.
So it's just like anything is that you need to do the right validation when you do an evaluation, whether it's a technology platform or whether it's using a third-party provider for people. You want to make sure you do your homework. To your point, when you ask the question on security, how is your security? I mean, you look at cyber security is just growing enormously because you see all of those attacks and things that happen. It's even more important that you have the right infrastructure and technology infrastructure to protect, whether it's automation or it's even AI. And what are you opening up in your firewall to pull information in? That's important to know.
But clients are starting to ask, right, for it.
Yeah.
It's like on the one hand, they're having that problem of they look up their own thing and say, I would have done it this way, even though they're not an accountant. On the flip side, they're like, what are you doing to make sure my information is safe?
Yeah, and I think what we saw in like the early cloud era also was the rise of the SOC 2, right? SOC 2
for
provides.
people who don't know what that is.
For people who don't know what that is, SOC 2 is the standard for information security. Whether you are a pure cloud provider or a cloud-enabled practitioner, you're able to provide assurance around your information security practices. So if it helps your clients feel safer, right? In the world of AI, and if we assume that every company in the future is AI-enabled in some way, we are going to see another wave of compliance or assurance standards, right? The one that we are seeing more and more of is called the ISO 42001. It is around AI management systems, and it's providing assurance around an AI provider's controls and risk management practices in building AI systems, right? And I would say it's not just going to be AI systems. I saw last week that KPMG also got their ISO 42001.
Yep, they did.
Why do you think they are getting that, right?
Right. Well, I think they're getting. Well, are you asking me that?
Yes, of course.
Is it rhetorical?
I mean, kind of.
I used to work at KPMG, so I think they're getting it to be able to tell their clients, here's how we're protecting things.
Yes.
Here are the steps we're going to take to preserve that relationship. And I'm not going to say ensure because that's a legal term. Help ensure that your stuff is safe.
Yes.
Because that's important.
Mitigate the risk.
Mitigate the risk.
I
That's
work
what they're
for a law
doing.
firm.
Due diligence and mitigate your risk. And yeah, it's important, and it has to bring that level of comfort to people who don't understand the technology that they're using or you're using, because we don't. Everybody is not a technologist.
Yeah.
And they don't understand the technology, and they don't know where this database is, and they don't know who has access to it. And how do I know it's not going to end up in ChatGPT's database and my, competitor is going to find it on the web somewhere?
Right. So we're going to see this continued wave of AI assurance standards, and just like we did with the cloud era, right?
And we need to.
We need to. And at the end of the day, what I think, what we're seeing is already a huge shift in human behavior. Like just 12 months ago, I would say maybe a third of the people around us used a ChatGPT or something similar. Fast forward to today, everyone is using it to some capacity.
Someone was talking about using it for recipes earlier.
Last session,
Right?
yeah.
Last
Absolutely.
session, somebody was talking about for
Absolutely.
recipes. It is great for recipes.
Yeah, I use it to plan out my dates with my wife.
Yeah, see?
So everyone is using it. So I think humans are just becoming more and more comfortable
With it,
both the advantages and the limitations of AI. But I think generally more and more folks are getting comfortable in using AI in their day-to-day lives and practices. And at the end of the day, Kane, your clients are going to care about what they pay you for, they get a ton of value for.
That's
right?
true.
Right.
If you're automating the hours that aren't very value add for your clients, and you're instead shifting those hours towards more strategic advisory, wouldn't you say your clients would appreciate that?
Well, that's the goal for sure.
And that's actually a higher price.
And higher
because,
value.
Right?
Yeah, no,
You're paying for the brain service instead of the technology service.
That is definitely
Right?
true.
Yeah, and we will certainly go into CPE.
Yeah, thank you. Well done. We've got one more CPE code to show you, so check out the bottom of your screen, and we're displaying the third CPE code.
All right, we're going to
Be
let
sure to
Kate
write
do.
this
Well,
down.
this is important.
If you're going to, there you go. If you're going to get CPE for this session, you want to write that code down. All right.
One thing that we didn't address that I wasn't sure how ethically tied it is, but we did talk about it when we were planning for this, was about the social impact. Do you want to take that, Becky?
Whew, social impact, that's a big opening.
Well, the question that we posed was whether AI enhances the staff experience in the right way. I don't know if that's where you want to go still, but that's what we talked about originally.
It definitely enhances it for sure,
Absolutely.
I think, from a technology perspective, a marketing perspective. It also, I think from a social perspective, it does enhance because every person has their own unique experience, and their thoughts, concerns, ideas are going to come from that limited experience. And now you have these tools that are available to you that are open to the world to bring in other patterns, because the machines work on the patterns, but to bring in other ideas and patterns and thoughts, to broaden your own thinking. I mean, I've been a marketer for 35 years. I've been in technology for 40 years. When I use these tools, they come back with answers sometimes that I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about that. Or that would be really great for this particular customer. Or that would be better for that particular customer. So I think it's great for the social aspect of opening people's minds
Yeah, I mean,
to the opportunity.
our profession has been talking about how do we make this a really attractive job.
Yeah,
right. And
that's true.
Of course,
I
we
call it
talk.
sexy. You
Oh
know?
yeah, sex-
There you go.
absolutely,
There you go.
right?
Boy.
And like, some folks are talking about like, reducing the requirements or increasing the pay. Let's face it,
Changing the exam.
no
Yeah.
one joined this profession for high pay. They joined it for a rewarding experience and career, right? So what this affords is an acceleration in career paths, right? Seeing the big picture, seeing the value of an assurance engagement or an advisory engagement, right? And that's what makes me an optimist, and it sounds like we're
Yeah.
all in agreement about
Well,
that.
I think the technology of what I've seen is just so incredible that has allows even the new staff to become technologists too.
Yeah.
And to see, it's a game changer for me. And I'll go back to my daughter. She's excited to become part of the public accounting because she's hearing all these cool things that Dad's saying. And maybe I'm in
That's so awesome.
trying to
Is this your daughter? Who's the Hoosier?
Yeah, she's a Hoosier, and we can put a plug for IU football, right? There we go. And I think the reason why my daughter and others like her is because they see of the technology and what can be done, and there's so many things that are happening in our industry so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it becomes a journey and an adventure. And I think a lot of the youth, I know you talked about different Gen Zs and all that, but I think a lot of the younger professionals are looking for change and being able to ride the wave of technology and to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that allows it for us.
And
Absolutely.
speaking of what younger people want, or what any of our attendees want, we have a present for you.
Oh.
Do you want to? It's your present. You want to tell us?
We like presents. So, as we've talked about AI ethics and compliance, there's a series of checklists that we have to help firm leaders, business leaders, to go through a variety of checklists to figure out where they need to go in their journey. From how do I pick a vendor? What are some steps I need to think about? What are some training elements for my staff at whatever level it might be? How do we work through the process of picking our first pilot? There's about 12 different sheets in here, little checklists to help you go through all of that stuff. So that's our present for you.
All right, there you go. Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
And will that also be in the digital tote bag, Gail, for those who didn't quickly take a picture of that QR code?
I can do that. We will be sending a a follow-up email to this event with information from all of our sponsors and some of our speakers, and we can include that in there too.
Great.
Okay. Any other final thoughts, last-minute takeaways for our attendees of things they need to do to remain incredibly ethical about their AI use?
Don't copy and paste and break copyright laws.
That's a good one.
Don't be afraid to lean in. There's a ton of great things possible with AI.
Yes.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to learn and ask questions. I think that all of us are learning together.
Yep.
And there's a lot of good collaboration, which I'm always amazed, which is fantastic in our space. And share and learn. And I think we all need to adopt it. And I think it's going to be here. It's not going to disappear. It's not like it's going to be a fad. I think it's here for forever. And I think we need to figure out how to use it in the right way.
Yep.
That's right.
And don't wait. Right?
Yeah, and what's amazing is that whatever you've learned today, there'll be more of it tomorrow. There'll
Yes.
be more stuff. It's just it's growing so fast.
Absolutely.
And it might change, and you'll have to just erase everything and
Start over.
Start over again.
Yeah, but it'll be a fun journey.
Incredibly dynamic and exciting time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for being part of this session. Thank you for our incredible panel for a lot of really useful information. Thank you to FieldGuide for sponsoring this session.
Of course.
And we are going to take a 1-hour break. We'll be back at, about an hour and 7 minutes from now. At
2 o'clock Eastern.
2 o'clock Eastern. And we'll see you then.